Are you someone who hates to cook? Do you find yourself eating out a lot, but you feel as if you probably shouldn't because your health might be not where you want it to be? Well, I am going to talk about in this video 5 questions you should ask yourself when trying to decide between different processed foods. Before we dive into it, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Amina Goodwin, a physician and health coach, and I help you to figure out how to eat better so that you can feel better and get on with life without having to be bogged down in the healthcare system. All right, so we'll dive right in with these 7 questions to ask yourself when trying to decide between different types of processed foods. First one is, and this is one of the more obvious ones, what are the ingredients? You want to be able to recognize the ingredients in whatever the food is, right? If the ingredient list is too long, start becoming a bit wary of buying it, right? 5 is a good number in terms of list of ingredients. The longer the ingredient list beyond 5, the more likely it is that you should stay away from that food. In addition to the length of the ingredients, the ingredient list, you want to know if these things are recognizable. Are these things that you would keep in your own kitchen, in your own pantry to be able to create meals yourself? If these are things that you would never purchase to create a meal yourself at home, then this is a food that you probably should not be having that much of, right? Second question to ask yourself is, how much added sugar does this food contain? Okay, so you can see in the ingredient list whether or not it has sugar. Now, a lot of times sugar is called something else. So there are like almost 100 different types of names for sugar. They want us to think that it's, I don't know, concentrated fruit juice, invert sugar, demerara sugar. There's so many different names for sugar, and many of the names actually don't even have sugar in the name, right? But if you can't tell, or if you want to get a good glimpse without having to read through a long ingredient list, then you just look at the nutritional label, and on the carbohydrates it will state in the subline total sugar, right? And it'll say on that as well, including X amount of added sugar. If it says 0 grams added sugar, then it means that any sugar contained in the food is sugar that's naturally occurring in the ingredients. If it's something that has fruit or dairy, because dairy has some amount of sugar, milk has sugar, right? So it might be a naturally occurring sugar, nuts and so on and so forth. But you can get a rough idea of the total sugar amount, and whether specifically for added sugar, you want to keep the added sugar amount at less than 24 grams in a 1-day period, 24-hour period, right? Every 4 grams is equal to 1 teaspoon. So when you start tallying labels, you want the total amount to be no more than 24 grams, which is the same as 6 teaspoons. If you're looking at something and that one serving has 30 grams of sugar, then that might be something to consider having less of or having none of at all, right? Third question to ask yourself is, does it, about processed foods, does it contain trans fats? Now, trans fats were banned a few years ago in foods. Supposedly, trans fats were to be banned. The thing about trans fats is that they cause, the body has a negative reaction to trans fats. They cause inflammation, chronic inflammation, smoldering inflammation, and just lots of problems with inflammation of blood vessels. You get plaques forming, and when those plaques grow, you can get heart attacks, strokes, and so on and so forth. So trans fats contribute to the inflammation that can cause the development of plaques. Now, even though trans fats were banned, like I talked about the multiple names of sugar, there are multiple names of fat and all sorts of other additives. And so instead of trans fats, what you might see on a label is hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. If you see ingredients on a list that include the word hydrogenated or the words partially hydrogenated in front of whatever fat it is, then most likely there's some amount of trans fat in the food. Now, one thing about the trans fat ban is that they banned it beyond a certain percentage. So if you have a small percentage, and I can't remember if that's 1 or 3% of trans fat in the food, the company is not, they don't need to disclose that. Now, that might not be a problem if you're having the food once in a blue moon, but if this is a food that you're having lots of every single day, then the tiny amounts of trans fats will accumulate, and you can, your body can start having problems with inflammation from the trans fat. So anything with hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, you want to consider staying away from, right? That was 4. Number 5 would be, number 5th question to ask yourself is, you know what, if I eat this food regularly, would it negatively impact my health goals? And most people are able to answer this question. You know, if you're honest with yourself, you can answer this question, and you know the foods that you cannot afford to eat every single day, and some of them you probably shouldn't even eat them every week. So that's just something in terms of, it's just being mindful, because a lot of times we do things automatically, but you want to start being mindful. And when you're choosing things, you think to yourself or ask yourself, is this food contributing to a state of overall great health for me? And if you cannot answer yes to that question, then that processed food is something that you may want to put back or limit in terms of the quantities, right? Another question to ask yourself is this food fortified with vitamins and minerals? Now, a lot of times in the act of processing food, the beneficial components are removed. So they remove the naturally occurring fat. They remove, you know, because it might go rancid on the shelf when it's packaged, right? And they might put in some kind of fake fat, partially hydrogenated, whatever, that's more shelf stable and much less likely to go rancid. They will remove the fiber also. That helps to also prolong the shelf life, and just, you know, maybe with an enhancement of taste. But when they're removing these naturally occurring foods that help to naturally occurring components that promote nutrition, at the same time, the naturally occurring vitamins and minerals are removed, like fat-soluble vitamins, for example, vitamins A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. Those are the fat-soluble vitamins. Now, if you're removing the naturally occurring fat in the food, it means that you're also, at the same time, removing the fat-soluble vitamins. When you're removing fiber and so on, you're removing minerals and other vitamins. So if you're seeing fortified on a lot of these foods that you're eating, it means that they are very processed. And the concern is that, yes, they re-added vitamins and minerals, but are those re-added vitamins and minerals in a form that's easily accessible by your body? So a lot of times these are manufactured, synthesized vitamins, particularly in a factory, and they might not be in that bioavailable form, in a form that's available to your body. So just to be aware of breakfast cereals, commonly very, you know, fortified. Also breads and flour products, those also tend to be fortified as well. So if it says fortified, it might be processed a bit too much, and you might want to limit those things and have those things that are not processed as much, right? And then the last thing that you can ask yourself, the 7th question is, honestly, is this food addictive? Is it hyper palatable? Is it something I have a hard time putting away, right? And I have a tendency to finish the packet. If this is a food that is addictively tasty, then this is probably going to be something that is overly processed, and you might want to minimize it. It's gonna probably be one of those foods that do not contribute to the healthy person that you want to be, right? So those are 7 questions to ask yourself when trying to decide whether or not you should have processed food, and even more importantly, if you should be having these processed foods on a regular basis. We're all going to have processed foods, but the question is, how much are we having? I might have some lentil chips, tasty, hyper palatable lentil chips every few months or so, right? But you don't want to keep these things in your house where you're tempted, and all these things in general, you don't want to have them in large amounts, because the negative impact of your body will start showing up eventually, right? So just to summarize quickly, the questions to ask yourself about a processed food to help you decide whether or not to take it is: 1, what are the ingredients? Is it a long list, and are these things that you cannot pronounce? 2, how much added sugar does it contain? 3, does it contain trans fats, right? Essentially, does it have in the ingredient list hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated in front of whatever oil might be in it? Was that 3? That was 3. 4, how, if you eat that food regularly, how is it contributing to your health goals, the health goals that you've set up for yourself? 5, is this a hyperpalatable or addictive food? 6, is it fortified with minerals and vitamins? And did I give you the 7th one? I might have only given you 6. I have several more here. But let's just give you a 7th one as a bonus. Would your children like it? Is it something that children would have a hard time putting back, right? Again, very palatable to children. So if you answered yes to any of these things, then these are processed foods that you want to minimize, you want to limit, so that overall you're not negatively impacting yourself with these foods. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, as always, I simply request that you subscribe to the channel. That way it helps other people see this video and benefit from what I've said in the video. Thanks for watching and have a good day. Bye.